One of the things that's most curious about the whole question of why landscape in this day and age, and one of the things that seems to have separated me from the other artists working in this genre, is what Hugh Davies said. It appears that my work has gone from painting a place to setting a stage. You're readying a mood to tell these stories. And I think pretty much most of the work I do starts with that foundation. Combine that with the necessity to push the medium into places where it hasn't gone. That creates the accidents that take us to where the magic is, the magic to where the art can take you. And that's what is most exciting, I think, for the painters to work. The pursuit after that was to find a new expression, a new voice in a conventional language. It just only made sense to tell stories, literally write them through the painting. And that's when I started including text running through the geological strata of a given composition. So the brush strokes are actually alternated with text in a way that my painting technique, even though it looks hyper-real when you look at a little baby JPEG, the technique, particularly after you rip through it with a power tool, is quite abstracted, even though the end results is a realistic image. To have the calligraphy go down free-floating, as does the brushstrokes, contributes to a much more cohesive painting, I think. One of the characteristics of the compositions that I use is that I have no foregrounds. So you have to pass across water or through air before you get to the landforms in the mid-distance that hold the light that determine mood. The most epic one of these compositions is actually in the collection of the Albany Institute of History and Art. The text that I've woven into that piece actually happens in the water. It's the only composition I've ever done where the text is woven into the water surface. It's also the only painting I've ever done where I deliberately calculated the size of brushes I would use at specific distances. Actually, it was specific heights, because the distance is the same, but the mountain goes up and fades off rather dramatically, very high above the water surface. And I believe I used 8 or 9 different brush sizes and just painted spontaneously, and the end result is such that the composition feels a depth that is most effective, and I doubt would be as effective if I had just used one brush. The lineage that my sensibility follows tends to start with the 19th century Americans. Then it goes to Rockwell Kent, Morrison Hartley, and then to Hitchcock and David Lean, who are actually filmmakers from the UK. The phosphorescent was a breakthrough. I wanted to replace the reflected light that comes through the glass of a picture window with emitted light coming off the surface of a canvas. When you deal with paint that emits its own light, bright fluorescent paint under black light creates a contrast ratio that by far exceeds what can be achieved in reflected light. You wanted to be able to go through into the painting, break that two-dimensional plane to a point where the first objects you see were so far away that moving in front of them wouldn't affect that illusion. And that's where the depth came from. And I just don't see any reason to change that. And as my work has gotten more abstract, which is tough to do with phosphorescent paint because it's just physically a hard paint to move, I still like the idea of illuminating foregrounds. It just brings you, it breaks that plane, it takes you into the piece immediately, and that's when the illusions can take over. It tends to be more about luminosity than it is about color. And if the colors are too bright, it can cut back on the luminosity that you're trying to convey. And by cutting back on luminosity, you immediately go into the mood. And it's that, once again, it's that pursuit of the mood that is paramount with regard to the initial excitement I have about a given idea. So I want to stay with that mood first, and the colors sort of find themselves.